So this is just the timeline of the remainder of the budget process. I made note of the two public hearings, April 17th and 23rd. We see here there's the called one for the budget hearings that we'll be having April 30th. Reconciliation workshop where City Council is going to reconcile based on feedback they got from the public, May 7th, and look for a vote on the budget May 14th, a day ahead of the mandated legal adoption deadline. And with that,
Questions?
I'm ready for the questions.
Okay, you get the first question because you couldn't write it down.
Oh, I wrote it down.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to write it?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just looking at page 37 of your executive summary. You don't have it in your slides here. I noticed there the operating expenses went up by 7.5%, which is much higher than inflation. But I also noticed that pay-as-you-go contributions reduced by 17%. So essentially, it seems like you're borrowing from the future to mask the true operating expenses. So I don't see the budgetary restraint. So where's the budgetary restraint when operating expenses went up by 7.5%? And this looking at page 37 of your executive summary.
Mm-hmm. So, microphone. So, the 7.5%, that's one of the categories reflected on there. So, for context, it's a table that shows personnel, fringes, operating expenses, capital, debt, pay-go, and reserves. So the line you're talking about, the operating expenses of 7.5%. So that includes a lot of the items I was previously talking about that we would consider like the budget drivers. The city garage, the risk management, $2 million. Recycling would be in that operating account. So the 2.77% is a much bigger number and where you're seeing that growth. But whenever you have a smaller number, like the 600 million that's at, then 7.5% could seem a little misleading. One of the other things that's important to note is that some of the costs have been redirected from what were historically in the CIP. So one of the things that we were looking at are some of the IT projects within the CIP had what you would consider more operating budget costs, such as consulting fees and things of that nature. And we made a concerted effort to try to bring those back to the operating budget and reflect them within IT's operating budget or within the internal service fund. So that could also be having an impact on that section of the summary table.
Okay? All right, so our property tax assessments are being raised, even though the 2-cent rate increase is going down, it's still getting raised. It said, yet sales of our homes are going down, because so many people are not able to sell their homes because of the increase in interest, increase of costs in every part of household budget with a true lowering of taxes be recommended by you. That would be the logical thing to do. I think that's a statement, not a question. Right? Schools are the FT, the full-time employees for teachers, right? So they lowered theirs. Public Works, what positions are they doing in there? The increase, what were the positions? Are they all the same thing?
16.
16, that's all?
Yeah, so I'll go back to that slide where I've made note of a couple of those.
Okay, they wanted to know if the full-time employees for schools are teachers. The increase in the school employees.
No, so the increase from schools, they made a concentrated effort to increase security presence, I think at elementary schools, and then they also had an increase in middle school guidance counselor or counseling services. But I don't think it was.
And I think the rest of them, they were, people that were already retiring or something like that. So.
And so within the
people that were leaving.
Within this, yeah, as well as potentially grant-funded teachers positions. So they did have an overall reduction, I think of 70. I'm looking at Katie and she's not nodding, so.
It's 80.3.
Okay, 80.3 positions, and some of those I do think were instructional type positions, and, but not what?
Not
Yeah, but, oh yeah, definitely not filled positions, they would have been vacancies, but that's between that reduction of the 80 and then the 30 or more that I was talking about, that's how you get to that net decrease.
Why did they need 60 more firefighters? Did we build another fire station?
No. So, this is, the fire department communicated this need for 60 FTEs, and that was my initial question as well. I mean, we had a very thorough discussion of this. Typically, when you see a request of 60 FTEs, you would expect to see a reduction of call response times or a corresponding increase in service delivery, and the fire wasn't able to articulate that. So what they said is, what this is going to actually do is just allow them to keep maintaining services without burning out their existing staff. So based on a 2-year look back, we don't have a long data history of this, but it appears that there's an increase in the use of leave, whether it's military leave, sick leave, family, the city now offers paternity leave. So there's just a higher utilization of leave, and they're entitled to that leave, and whenever they do take it, there's a need to maintain a minimum staffing on that rig or that fire truck. And so what that's resulting is for them to hold people over and say, hey, look, sorry, we don't have enough people to cover this shift. You just have to stay over because we need bodies on the trucks.
Yeah.
So it's
It's a lot of leave.
It is, and it's, as the city manager said, it's something going into the proposed where with the 17 FTEs, it's a start, and what we could do is it would allow the gradual review. What if there's a scale back in the leave utilization in the next year and that pressure isn't on? So there's a lot to still be looked at and determined in terms of what that impact is going to have, and if it's will be a continuing trend.
Okay, in the non-departmental budget, we're given to charities. How is that constitutional?
Okay. I'm not an attorney. But I can say that we work closely with the city attorney's office. When city council makes a decision to provide a contribution to a nonprofit organization, there are checks that have to go in place, and that's the key. It's for a nonprofit organization. They have to be a registered 501c3. It can't be a for-profit business. For-profit business would have to be, the city would have to be securing services.
Yeah.
Okay?
Do
A
it.
501c3.
Can we get on the list?
Yeah,
Can we
well,
get
you
on the
have
list?
to apply for it, and I'm not gonna do that. I don't think,
Or ask.
when you give to a charity, that has to be something voluntarily. You shouldn't be picking my pocket to give to somebody as a charity.
Here.
You know what I mean? So anyway, how much of our budget goes to failed public-private partnerships?
I'm trying to think of, yeah, I'm sure there is definitely one that somebody had in mind whenever they were asking that question.
Wait, Park by the Ocean?
I'd say it's sort of
Which one? Which one?
Which one?
Oh, Wave Park by
The
the
Wave
Ocean?
Park. Well, nothing failed yet. It just keeps sucking up money and hasn't even opened
The
yet.
Atlantic Park.
But we do have like the convention center, the sports thing, the Sandler Center, all failing projects.
Sandstock is the only one that's ever made money.
I can speak to the proposed budget and the sports center at the oceanfront though. So obviously, everybody sounds like they're well familiar with the partnership that previously did not pan out as originally planned. And so with the ending of that agreement and the operation, CVB is actively pursuing a new agreement, a new operator to take over the operations and do the day-to-day So the proposed budget includes a reserve within the TIP fund to allow them some operational support if that's needed, but it'll really be pending on what the terms are, what the agreement is for the operation of it. But based on the information provided by Victus or the consultant previously that studied it, it should be something that could be revenue generating a positive operational agreement. So
Yeah.
we're hopeful.
They seem to run these things in the red and not make money like a private person could.
How much did the convention center lose last year or this year? How much should they in the hole?
The convention center,
Yep.
I can, within the proposed budget,
And the sports center?
I can
and
tell you.
Sandals Center.
And the
So-
aquarium.
So-
Aquarium.
So there's so general government support is what we typically think. If it's a government building or facility, it's not necessarily, the internal vernacular is not necessarily a subsidy. It's a general fund department, and just because it doesn't break even from its operational revenues, it just receives a general government support allocation. So with CVB, or Convention Center, the amount,
More than the convention center.
I know,
Can you email answers?
I like that. Can we email that
We
one
have
back?
that, it's just not here.
Would it be fair to say the convention center loses $2 to $4 million a year on average?
I would say the general fund support on average is definitely between $2 to $4 million. They definitely do not receive enough department specific revenue through booking, through conventions and events to support their baseline operations of the facility. So what the CVB, Convention Visitor Bureau, will tell you though, is that because of those, there's a bigger draw to the area, and there's more tax revenue dollars being generated with heads and beds and meal spending. So even though it doesn't necessarily directly come back to their operating budget, those conventions that they're booking are resulting in a net positive impact to us.
Yeah, that goes back to the TIP fund, so it doesn't really help us. Okay, cost increase should include better service on recycling. How is it that other states get local 5 cents per bottle? Why do we have to pay? Currently, most recycling sorting machines shut down or bind up with plastic bags. Yeah, you can't put plastic bags in. I used to work at TFC Recycling, it jams up the thing. Does that extra charge include ability to have access to a better sorting system? More or less, what's the increase for?
Yeah, it's just for what the contractor, it's not a city-run operation.
Right.
So the city is dependent on a contractor to provide those services. And whenever it went out, there was really only one contractor in the area that was able to do the curbside recycling. And so it's one of those to where if that's the only competition that's in the market, that's really the only option that the city would have to rely on for that type of service, unless there was a desire to staff up, invest in additional trucks, and for the city to take that on. But it would take a lot of capital investment up front and probably would not be any cheaper than the $3 a month increase.
Correct. Okay, says y'all are hypocritical because the budget showing the cost of collective bargaining will add to the city budget? Who said that?
Which one?
You.
Oh.
Have you,
Have y'all ran a hypothetical budget showing the
Oh,
cost
great.
of collective bargaining will add to the city's budget?
So
We're already $27 million in the negative.
it's really hard to do that. And I'm not just trying to punt and dodge the question. It's hard because there's a lot that would go into it of what's the agreement, is there working conditions in there. So let's pick the firefighter one, for example. And I'm not picking on anybody. I'm not trying to come down one side or the other on this. Trying to be neutral. But if there's 60 FTEs that were added, and there's not a new construction of a facility to house the 60, and say that trend changes and now people are no longer using their leave, well, then there's gonna be a need to house that many more firefighters in there. Would they need bunk beds? Would they, so it could just lead to a workplace condition where, okay, well, we gotta go expand these. It could just go 1,000 different directions. It really depends on what is in the contract and what would be agreed to.
It'll kill us. You mentioned a parking garage at Rudy Lou to be built. Do the nearby hotels have any investment in that project? And if not, will it be for beach visitors alone? I believe Bruce Thompson owns a hotel nearby.
So just as a comment, and I think I can just comment on this because as proposed, it is just to be a
Was that something we
a
wanted?
park. Right, so city council had reached out and they did surveys with the public, and that was the overwhelming feedback was a desire for green space and a park.
Oh, so the parking garage is for Rudy Lou.
Yeah, so it's for the 60 million for the park development itself. There's a small portion of it that's parking, but it's not necessarily a structured parking like you would expect at town center.
Okay. What about giving teachers a raise separate from the school administration positions? The admins are way overpaid and they use the teachers, need a raise. You don't have no control over the school budget.
Schools could do that. I think they have done that in the past, so it's
Yeah.
something they could do.
Okay, the VDOT Public Works people, is that temporary and for a specific project, and will it go away, those people go away after that?
No, it's, I mean, we definitely give them credit for that revenue in their operating budget. If that operating revenue does go down, say VDOT scaled that back in future years, Public Works would have to make a corresponding reduction in their operating budget to offset it. So whether it's the FTEs or the implementation or their operating accounts, they would make a reduction.
Okay, so how much would we bring in if we taxed boats like we tax cars?
Ooh,
Use your car to get to work and be a part of the economy. People hide wealth in boats in Virginia Beach.
Yeah,
Boats are a tax haven in Virginia Beach.
and that's what you had, pets.
I remember the commissioner of the revenue coming before city council because the tax on it is like .0000001, right? So you're not really collecting anything. And the boat owners said, we'll go park our boats somewhere else instead of parking them in the city. So they didn't raise it. They said it was really hard to collect it.
I put it up there to compare the region. I wasn't expecting the
I pay a
tax
premium on
question,
my
so I don't
RV.
have it in my pocket.
I pay a premium on my RV, it's a recreational vehicle also.
Yeah.
Why can't we tax the boats? The boats are $1 million, $20 million boats sitting in the Lynnhaven River as a tax haven.
Yeah.
So how much of a financial impact would it be if we increase the senior tax relief to 500,000 net worth?
I don't know. It would take, I would have to go through the exercise. So the Commissioner of Revenue captures the information, requests the applications, and then they make a determination of who qualifies and who doesn't based on those. We could probably run that scenario. It would be an estimate based on who fell out of the program from qualifying up to that threshold, but it would be an estimate. So something that we suspect, like with the veterans, is that the growth in it's just over time through the word of mouth and the spreading of, hey, look, well, I qualified for this. It really is in the executive summary, and it's a good comparison. So like the next closest comparison to us, I think, is the city of Suffolk, who they have similar threshold qualifications. Well, the difference is though, the Virginia Beach program is unlimited. So somebody with $1 million a home that makes less than 50,000, I don't have it open though, makes less than $50,000 a year, they could be exempted $1 million, the entirety. Suffolk, they're capped at the median assessed home value. That's the max relief that you can get. And so Virginia Beaches is really robust in a lot of those different ways. So another, and I'll get off my 59,000. But another example, if a household makes up to $100,000, they qualify for tax freeze, meaning I can't afford that increase. I want to freeze it at my last year tax bill, and then it stays frozen in perpetuity until they become unenrolled from the program. So that's
What's the income
100,000.
requirement on that?
100,000.
Household.
So the house doesn't count on their income, it's
Yeah, the
just
house
what
doesn't.
money they
So
make, so.
it's for the individual and then the spouse, 102,000.
Just, so so if you pay $4,000, that's your tax bill, and if that's, as long as you're under that. then
If
it's
you
frozen.
enroll, you would freeze it and it would say $4,000 forever until you are unenrolled from the program.
Is that probably subject to an annual review, I suppose?
Yeah, it's gotta be done every year, and it's not deferred when they sell the house, they don't,
That's correct.
okay, it's not deferred. Okay, what is the change of getting rid of recycle altogether? What is the chance of getting rid of recycling altogether?
I don't know. I think the public comment survey was pretty overwhelmingly in favor of keeping curbside.
Okay. Dick, you had a question?
I got more than one amount of quick.
Okay, they better be quick. What are they,
Grace-
yes and no? Because other people questions.
Almost. Grace period, you said 5 days, so a penalty is start on the 7th, or the 6th.
The sixth.
6th. The BPOL, you said that qualifying new businesses get a $0 license for 2 years. Do you have the criteria for that?
If they're
That you can give?
if they're a new business to the city of Virginia Beach and didn't previously have a footprint in the city, then it would qualify for a 2-year exemption from paying people taxes.
ShotSpotter, did y'all get any justification on only using that or something else where it just says we need to renew?
So the police chief provided a report out, the annual crime report out, and there was some pretty convincing information shared from that related to the impact and the benefits that are being received through the ShotSpotter. So, and when I say it's being continued, it's not necessarily that the contract was up and it's just renewed. That was just the year-over-year contract cost increase.
Do you have the percentage for the last 3 years that tells how much the raises were? They're proposing 3.5 this time. What they proposed in the past couple of years, so we know how much they went up.
Off the top of my head, I'm thinking 3.5 next year, 5% in the current year, and in the previous year, I think it was a minimum of 5, and I'm being squishy on this. It was a minimum of 5, but it ranged more because it was a step plan implementation. So I think the average was 8. Does that sound right?
Is your health insurance self-funded or not?
Yes.
Self-funded?
Okay, Al, you get the last question because we're over.
Yeah, how much control do you have to provide control over the school board budget in reference to the construction cost of modernizing the schools? I think it's out of control. It's probably beyond the intelligence in the school community that it really needs city council and city manager to take a look at that.
So there are restrictions. So the city schools have the revenue sharing formula. And long ago, whenever that was established, the schools were to use that for both their operating and their CIP planning, strategic looking as to what their needs are. And so really to cover their CIP, including their debt service associated with any bonding of any schools that they might have. So whenever the funds are sent over via the revenue sharing formula, it's provided to schools in lump sum form. And there's not a lot of control over that revenue once it's provided to schools. City manager can't say you can use it for this or you can use it for that. Schools manage their own CIP section, and they determine what their facility needs are. It's not necessarily, again, in the, within the control of the city manager or city staff to tell schools, well, you can't put it towards this facility, you can't put it towards that facility. It's really a school board policy decision in terms of what their facility needs are.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming.